Hello everyone, this is Kumar. Today's session is knowing about variables in Java. Like what is a variable? What are the different types of variables available in Java? So what actually a variable is? A variable is an identifier. A variable is an identifier used to represent or store a particular value. That is what a variable is. The main purpose of variable is to store a value or to represent a value. The syntax for creating a variable in Java is you should have a data type which represents the type of data you have stored and the name of the variable and the data you want to store into it. Example, int age equals to 100 or let's say 90. This is what a variable. Here the variable is, the name of the variable is age, which is of type integer holding a value called as 90. This is what a variable is. And when it comes to Java, there are three types of variables. There are three types of variables. The first one is local variables, non-static variables, and finally static variables. So these are the three different types of variables that we have in Java. So let's go with local variables. So let's do all the things practically. So I'll be using the IDE now, that is NetBeans IDE, to do all my programs. So let's go with local variables practically, programmatically. So let me create a simple project here. New project. So let me select a project, Java application. So let me give the name as variables. Finish. Then after this, we should create a class. So here, the particular project which we have given, that will be created. So here it has been created. So right click on it, go to new, select Java class. So let me select a class, let me call it as local variable. I'm giving a class name as local variable. Let's say finish. Now the class has been created, you can see here. Yeah, the class has been created now. Now let me take a function over here, let's call it as a method. Let me take a method over here, void m1. This is my method. So in the method I'm defining a variable int a, then I'm initializing it to the value with the value 10. Now here the variable which you have given inside a particular method, then that variable is called as local variable. So here the variable a is called as local variable. So why it is called as local variable? It is called as local variable because the scope of this variable is within this particular block. The scope is local. That means the methods outside of this particular block will not be able to access the variable a. Your variable a will not be available outside this block or outside this method. That is the reason it is called as local variable. So let me take the main method now. And as I told you that the thumb rule, if you want to call any method, then in that case you must create an object. Now anyways, I want to print this variable. So let's say system.out.println. So you can use IntelliSense. So the value of a is plus a. Very simple. Alright, let me create the object now. So to create an object, a keyword called as new used. So let's say new local variable. So you are creating an object for the class called as local variable. So you must use something called as constructor here in order to create an object. Alright. Now let's name this particular object. So I want to give a reference to this object. Again, what am I doing is I'm creating a variable now. So here local variable, let's say LC. LC is the local variable now again, which is created in main method, which is referring to an object. Here this A is referring to what? 10, and this LC local variable, it is referring to what? It is referring to the object. Now using the object you can call the m1 method. So lc.m1. That's it. Let me run this. So to run this, right click on it and click on run file. So you can see here it says the value of A is 10. Alright. Now we'll see more important things about local variables. In Java you do not have the concept of garbage values. That means if you do not assign a value to a particular variable and if you try to use it, then your compiler gives an error. Now you see here I did not assign any value to my variable called A and I'm trying to access the variable A. As Java does not provide garbage values to the variables which are not initialized, hence your compiler gives an error saying that variable A might not have been initialized. That means you should initialize a local variable before you are using it. Let's create one more local variable in B. In this case I'm not initializing it as well as I'm not using it. Hence you can see what happens. So let me initialize A. Now I'm not initializing B as well as I'm not calling B over here. Hence here you can see your compiler is not giving any error. It assumes that you might store the result of any operation in this variable. That is the reason it is not giving any error for you. Okay, so this is about local variables. So let's go with one more type of variable called as non-static variable. So if you define any variable outside the method, then that variable is called as non-static variable. So that variable is called as non-static variable because we are not using any static keyword. And moreover, this variable can be called as instance variable or object variable because these variables are associated with objects. That means whenever you create an object, for that object a copy of this variable is given. Hence these variables are called as object variables or instance variables. Alright. So let's see this programmatically. So let me create one more class here. Let's call it as non-static variable. Okay. Now let me take the main method. I have taken the main method. If you define any variable outside all the methods and inside a class and without using static keyword, then that variable is called as non-static variable. So let's say int age equals to 19. So this variable is called as non-static variable. This variable is called as non-static variable. Alright, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna call this particular variable from my main method. So let's see, I'm trying to call it system.out.println of age. Now your compiler is giving an error, you can see. It says non-static variable age cannot be referenced from a static context. Static context is nothing but your static method. Your static method comes under static context and your non-static methods or non-static variables, they come under non-static context. So now you cannot access a non-static variable directly from a static method. Okay, so if you want to call a non-static variable from static context, you must create an object. So here you can see I'm creating an object from a class called as non-static variables. So non-static variables n equals to nif non-static variables. Have created the object now. Now here the important thing that you have to understand, whenever you create an object, a copy of the variable, a copy of the non-static variable or instance variable is given to that particular object. Now in this case, a variable called age's copy is given along with the value to your object. And more importantly, the objects will be created in a location called as, in a memory called as heap memory. And your non-static variables are lies along with the object. That means whenever this object gets created, along with this object, the copy of this variable is given. So that means for n variable, for n reference variable, we call it as reference variable because it is referring to an object. So n stores the address, we can say. Alright. Now for this n object, as of now we can call it as object. For this n object, a copy of the variable called age is given along with the value called as 19. Okay. Now if I want to access it, then simply I can say system.out.println of n.age. You can say n.age. So let me run this. You can see the age is 19. And more importantly, the more number of objects you create, for each and every object a copy is given. So how we can know that, how we can prove that for each and every object a copy is given? So for which what I can do now is, I'll try to change the value of age now by using this object. I'll say n.age equals to 200. Okay, let's say not 200, let's say 45. Now I'll say system.out.println n.age. Okay, now you'll be getting 45 now because you are accessing this age variable with respect to n. So whatever the variable you have as a copy for the n object, that is this variable's value will be replaced. 19 will be replaced with 45 now. Now let me create one more object. Let's call it as n1. So n1. Now I'll say system.out.println n1.a. Sorry, n1.age. Alright. Now let me run this. You see the difference now. So what you got here, you did not get 45, you got 19 over here for this statement. That means for this particular object, again a copy is given. The original copy is given, that is 19 with the value 19. Now if this n1 changes it, let's say n1.age equals to 30, then whatever the copy it has got, that copy's value will be changed. That means age equals to 30 now. So when I say n1.age, now it will be referring to the copy of that variable which was given to it, right? So let me run this. Now you can see you got 30 now. And more importantly, Java provides default values to these non-static variables. That means if I do not give a value to this, then it gives a value, it assigns a value based on the given data type. For example, it is integer, it will assign 0. If it is float, it will assign 0.0. If it is string, it will assign null, like this. Okay, so this is about your non-static variables. So let's go with the last type of variable called as static variables. So as I told you that non-static variables are object variables or instance variables. In the similar way, there are some type of variables which are associated with class. So those kind of variables are called as static variables. So static variables can also be called as class variables. So let's see a program to understand the importance of static variables. So here static is a modifier. It is a non-access modifier. So let me create one more program here. New Java class. Static variables. Static variables. Okay. Now let me take the main method. So how to define a static variable? Use static keyword before it. static int static int age equals to 10. Okay, now this is what a static variable is. This is what a static variable is. Okay, next what I'm going to do is, so these static variables are associated with your class. Hence, if you want to access these variables, then you can simply take the reference of your class. That means you can call these variables with your class name. So here you can see, I'll say system.out.println of static variables dot age. Static variables dot age. Let me run this. Now you can see what you have got. You have got 10. Okay, whatever the age that you have assigned. For example, you did not initialize this particular variable, then automatically what happens in this case, based on the data type, a default value will be assigned. Now in this case, default value will be what? 0. You can see the default value is 0. All right, next what we're gonna do is, we're gonna see that even with static variables, we can call the static variables by using object also. So let's say static variables s1 equals to new static variables. But calling this static variables with respect to object is not at all recommended, because you can call it directly by using the class name. In this case, you are creating an object. That means you are wasting some memory and you are giving some work to your JVM also for creating an object. All right, system.out.println s1 dot age. Okay, s1 dot age. So you can see here it is giving something like this, saying that you are accessing static field age, which is not recommended at all. So you have got 0 here. Now very important thing that you have to understand, when it comes to static variables, for each and every object the copy will not be given. The copy of static variables will not be given to your objects. Only one copy of your static variable will be maintained. So only that copy will be accessed. That means this particular will be shared to all the objects. If any object changes the value of this, that will reflect the whole program. That means that will reflect to other objects which are calling this. For example, what I am trying to do is, I am trying to say s1 dot age equals to 70. Now here, whatever the value you have, initially you will have the value called as 0. Now this 0 value will be replaced with 70. Let me run this. Now you can understand it. So 0 has been replaced with 70. Then after some time, s1 again changed the value to 40. It has changed the value to 40 and I'm trying to access it now. Now the original value which you had, that means 70, which is the original value as of now, because the 0 has been modified with 70. Now this is the current value. Now this value will be changed again with 40. You can see. Alright. Now if any other object is trying to access this after this modification, let me create one more object. Let's say s2. Now I'll say system.out.println s2.age. So let's say s2.age. s2 age. Now let me run this. Now what is the s2's age? It is 40, which was changed by your s1 object. Okay, I think this is very clear for you. The difference between static variable and non-static variable. The main difference between static variable and non-static variable is, static variables, they are binded or they are attached to the classes. Hence they are called as class variables, and whatever the variables which you create with static variable, with static keyword, those variables are called as static variables. For static variables, the static variables, they'll share directly, the address directly to all the objects. That means all the objects can call this particular variable directly. Okay, that means they can refer to this particular location. So if any modification is done for this particular variable, that will reflect to each and every object which is using it. And when it comes to non-static variables, for each and every object, what happens is a copy of the variable is given. So if you are changing the value by using your object, that will not reflect to the original one. Okay, and for both of these, default values are applicable. So subscribe for my channel to learn more and more with regards to Java. Thank you.